Hello, and welcome to this episode of Office of the Patriot, where we try to make sense out of the nonsense of the progressive left and rhino right. I'm your host, Myron Ybarra.
And I'm your co-host, Angry Mike.
We have a great show for you today because we've caught Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Facebook, with his hands in the proverbial cookie jar via an undercover journalist from the O'Keefe Media Group who went on a date with a senior Meta engineer. This engineer confirmed that any Anti-Kamala posts on Facebook are automatically demoted. Now, if you go back to episode 117, I speak to this issue on the macro scale and why I believe it's happening. So in today's episode of Office of the Patriot, we will discuss the particulars of this incident and offer a solution, or rather a common sense solution, to ensure that it doesn't happen again. Let me give you a real quick intro into what you're going to be learning in today's presentation. We have a senior Meta engineer named Jeevan Gawali. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. He's on a date with an undercover O'Keefe Media Group journalist. And during this date, she's asking him a number of different policy questions as it relates to the moderation and banning of content that is placed on Facebook by authorized users.
Say your uncle in Ohio said something about Kamala Harris isn't unfit to be a president because he doesn't have a child.
Okay.
That kind of shit is automatically demoted.
Meet Jeevan Gawali, a senior software engineer at Meta.
Are they doing a good job protecting our democracy? Because I can see these right-wing groups setting up Instagram accounts or Facebook accounts for that matter, right? And just start posting disinformation, be Harris is blah, blah, blah.
That's all going to be demoted 100%. The civic classifier is strong.
It appears Facebook is using an AI program called the Civic Classifier. And after a little bit of digging, I actually found out that there is a number of different classifiers Facebook uses to pigeonhole or classify their users. These AI classifiers predict active Facebook users' likes and dislikes, but the Civic Classifier works in particular on civic and political posts. So this Civic Classifier program is supposed to find social and political issues that have been talked about on Facebook, and then it catalogs those posts based on a point scale. So the people with similar scores within the Facebook community will be able to view them. But that's not what's happening. What is happening, or what appears to be happening, is the introduction of an intermediate step in the Civic Classifier program. So the first step is where the AI looks for posts that have a civic or political ideology, and then using what appears to be a binary mathematical program, determines if the user and or post is liberal or conservative. If the Civic Classifier program determines that you or your post is liberal, it's likely that you or the post will have a score of 0.40 or lower. If you're a moderate, you'll likely have a score of 0.41 to 0.59, and conservatives have a score of 0.60 and above. But instead of promoting the post to users with similar scores, Facebook just creates a relatively simple program to promote users and their posts with a 0.4 and below civic score, and shadow ban users with a 0.6 and above civic score. And Mr. Gawali confirms that's exactly what Facebook is doing. I remember Facebook users used to have a way to go into their preferences and find what Facebook believed was their political leaning. However, that process has since been removed. I tried to find it and I couldn't. And I guess this is the reason why.
I had my assumptions, but what I think what you found really explains a lot, how they go about suppressing free speech in favor of, their leftist ideology. So that video that you just showed, I shared that on Facebook last week, and immediately my account got suspended, within seconds. It was 2 seconds, from clicking post. My screen went to kind of a blank page, and then it came back and it said I was suspended. Didn't tell me what for. I assumed it was for something else. I didn't really think sharing a post that was already on Instagram would have done that, but I thought it was a fluke. So, I went and I used my backup account, which is for my dog Jimmy. And I only post, pictures and video of him on there. And it suspended that account immediately as well within 2 seconds. So it was all, the algorithm caught it. It was all automated. So, what I did was I asked to have the suspension reviewed or whatever they call it. And it was weird because they reinstated my primary account under my name, which is great, but they kept Jimmy's account permanently. They said it was permanently shut down, and they said there was no recourse. So I'm like, it's kind of sad. I had a lot of pictures and video and stuff. It was just a fun account to have. But anyway, it's like, it's like, that's just them using, AI to fuck with users, specifically people that, post or share anything that goes against their beliefs. And in this case, it was programmed to catch that for whatever reason, because it was Kamala anti, free speech. So what's ironic is the same video that I shared was posted on Instagram on numerous accounts. I saw it on James O'Keefe's page. I saw it on several other accounts that I follow. They all posted the same video of that, that undercover James O'Keefe, reporter with the Meta engineer. So it's just funny because Instagram and Instagram and Facebook are owned by Meta. It's the same company. So apparently they're not on the same page. But I think the fact that you discovered exactly how they categorize, all of us when we use Facebook, at least in that regard, with regards to politics and, ideology, that's pretty interesting. So it's very eye-opening. And I've always feared the 3-letter government organizations being used against the people, being used against us. But in this case, the social media company is, the glaring example of George Orwell's Big Brother. Crazy.
Agreed. I believe the shadow banning is part of the reason the Office of the Patriot isn't climbing the ranks as quickly as it should. So, if you're watching this presentation, please, please, please take the time to like, subscribe, and share this video and the channel. You are the only way this channel continues well into the future. In this next clip, you'll see Mr. Gawali use the term red listed, and you'll get clarification on what red listing is.
Would the person who posted that would he be notified that?
The person would not be notified, but there's these things that what you collect is like, if a bunch of items that, like if at least a couple of items that a person has created has violated civic classifier, then they're also red listed.
Our OMG American Swiper asked Jeevan if Meta was shadow banning users for their anti-Kamala Harris posts. Take a look at what he says.
So is that called shadow banning?
Shadow banning, yeah.
Okay, so they will be shadow banned.
Correct.
They will never be shown. But so they will see a dip in like impressions and engagement,
yeah.
But they would not be like officially warned of the reason why.
Correct.
So I went on my typical internet search for Facebook red listing, and I found nothing. Sure, I did find it in the Collins Dictionary, and a link to that definition is in the description section below, along with all the receipts for today's presentation. But Facebook has no mention of red listing anywhere. However, I remember hearing this term somewhere, or maybe something like it, and then it hit me. I heard it in the movie A Few Good Men, but it was called Code Red. A code red is giving an untraceable order to a subordinate staff that is outside policy and the UCMJ, which is also known as the Uniform Code of Military Justice. It appears that red lists are being used by Facebook to shadow ban conservative political and social speech without the user even knowing, without doing a deep dive into their analytical settings. Being red listed is a code red, which is just another way of saying shadow ban. All done without the courtesy of even knowing. Pretty shitty way to run a social media platform. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, this shit pisses me off. It's near impossible for us to know if we're being shadow banned or if the things that we're sharing and posting are demoted, so as to suppress our voices. But I can only speak from, my perspective, my experience. I think I pay attention to detail, and I definitely pay attention to trends. And I've noticed that since starting, when I started becoming more vocal in slamming Democrats and governmental organizations a couple years ago, about 4 or 5 years ago, I rarely have anyone comment or even acknowledge my posts anymore. I rarely, I tend to share quite a bit, but, maybe on the order of 6 to 10 posts a day, which is kind of a lot, so I understand a lot of people don't have time to keep up with all their friends and multiple posts and all that. And some of it might be going against the grain, for those that can't handle the truth. What can I say? Or reality. But, I've asked many of my friends over the years to tell me, do you see my posts in your feeds? How often do you see what I'm sharing? And the answer is almost always, well, I used to, but I don't see anything anymore. I haven't seen your posts in a long time. So I'm like, okay. Now I understand maybe some of them are, telling me white lies because they maybe fear they might hurt my feelings, but they should know by now I really do not give a fuck. So anyway, so also I tend to, basically, I only have a handful of friends that ever comment and acknowledge my posts, which is weird. And I also almost always see the same friends, their posts. So there's definitely an algorithm working to kind of group us however they see fit, which sucks. And, whatever, posts I see tend to ideologically, align with me. And I'm sure the same thing. But it's funny because a lot of the posts that I share, you don't see. So I know for a fact that they are shadow banning me. I'm 99% sure and suppressing my posts. So do I know that for a fact? No, but I would definitely bet my house on it.
Well, go ahead and bet your house. And if somebody takes you up on the bet, you can use the proceeds to get the hell out of California, which is where you should be anyway. And finally, we have the end-all, be-all alcohol and hormone-induced bombshell equivalent of a Catholic confessional. Mr. Gawali goes on to implicate his boss, the CEO of Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, of not only being in bed with the Democrat Party, but doing their bidding at their behest.
Jeevan also confirmed that Mark Zuckerberg intends to help the Democrats in this election cycle.
You guys have the ability to influence the outcome of the election.
Yes.
Do you think Zuckerberg agrees? Good. Is he going to help the Democrats?
Yeah.
Oh, so he's like going to help the Democrats, right?
100%.
So we just reached out to Jeevan for comment. My name is James O'Keefe, and the girl works for me. And she recorded you. You're at Meta, and you're talking about... He said, and then he hung up the phone. So I guess the comment is off.
Now, I don't know about you, but to me, this absolutely smacks of election interference. Given that Meta, Facebook, enjoys the protections of Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, this would not be a far stretch to suggest that the demoting of conservative content and shadow banning of conservative users is tantamount to election interference. And some of you may be thinking, this is just conspiracy talk, despite what you just saw in the damn video we presented. I jumped online to get a second opinion from an arguably unbiased source, AI. I was playing around with ChatGPT, asking all kinds of silly questions to see if I could trip it up. And one of the questions I asked was related to what we're talking about today, how to ensure a balance between the rights of public entities and the rights of the people as it relates to free speech. This was supposed to have been accomplished with Section 230. However, if you've been paying attention to anything related to free speech and the internet, or what we talk about specifically on this channel about social media platforms, you already know that Section 230 is being used well outside of its original intent. And that said, ChatGPT suggested the following. modification of Section 230. Some proposals suggest amending Section 230 to impose clearer rules around content moderation, transparency, and accountability. And this would include clarifying the scope of protection, narrowing the protection so that platforms lose immunity when they engage in specific editorial actions, such as algorithmically amplifying or demoting certain content or users. Transparency requirements, forcing platforms to be more transparent about how they moderate content and disclose political biases in their algorithms. And then distinguish platforms from publishers, defining different levels of immunity based on whether a platform is acting as a neutral host of content or actively curating and editorializing content. So you have a program that was likely developed by a group of left-leaning nerds who spent 23 and a half out of a 24-hour day behind their keyboards developing the AI software. So you can assume, like I do, that the AI software is going to have a liberal progressive slant. And in this case, even with that slant, ChatGPT mirrored virtually all of my suggestions in my previous episode of Office of the Patriot. And honestly, I don't know whether I should be humbled or terrified by that fact. Mike?
All I can say is, for certain, fuck Section 230.
Absolutely.
All of the social media platforms should be held accountable for, fucking with our rights to free speech. And I'm a pessimist. I'm pessimistic that anything will be done to improve the situation. But I know for a fact that, the commies on the left despise us, and they feel that the First Amendment only really applies to them. So the leftists use governmental force to make us all comply with their demands, and, they demand our obedience. They do not want debate. They want our silence. Trump tapped Elon Musk, which is great. And he's been very vocal about trying to help figure out a strategy using, possibly congressional legislation to fix this issue with the leftist social media organizations like Meta. So Kamala and the vast majority of Democrats would like nothing more than to hogtie us and shove socks in our mouths. So, fuck Kamala.
Yeah, thanks, but yeah, no thanks. According to reliable sources on the internet, that action has been taken by many, many people in the Democrat Party.
And I'm about to boldly go where many men have gone before.
When discussing these issues and others like them, I find myself trying to figure out ways to solve the problems, or at least find ways to mitigate the impact that they have on people. But truth be told, that isn't going to happen unless Donald Trump gets elected as the 47th president of the United States. The shit show we have been experiencing for the last 3.5 years is only going to be exacerbated by a Harris-Walz administration. Now, if you happen to like paying more taxes and like getting less value for your dollar and you like having unsafe streets, well, then you're probably not watching this channel regularly, because no matter what we present to you, all you're going to hear is Orange Man is bad. For those of you who may be on the fence, my position, it is time to get the fuck off the fence and find a place on either side. The United States is at a crossroads. Our rights are being slowly eroded by our government with the complicity of big business and big tech. And the only chance we have to fix this shit show is to go back to embracing the Bill of Rights, the law, and trying to stop curtailing both of them. And this concludes today's episode of Office of the Patriot.
If you've enjoyed the presentation, please take the time to like, subscribe, and share this channel on your social media. We definitely appreciate it.
What he said. Also, please take the time to comment. Viewer engagement via comments is a major metric for channel accessibility on most social media platforms like YouTube and Rumble. You probably won't see this on Facebook. The more people that like, subscribe, and comment, the more this channel will come up when social and political content like this is searched for. And as always, have a blessed day. Stay safe out there.
Fuck Facebook.
Fuck Facebook.